In a court showdown that stunned everyone, Kody Brown's appeal against Meri comes to a head. But, just as the judge is about to give the ruling, one thing is evident: Robyn's response will upend everything. What's next for the Brown family? The atmosphere within the courthouse was tense with expectation. Footsteps, scurrying, and muffled whispers filled the room as the expectation mounted. It was not any ordinary courtroom, it was the platform for a war long in the making. For one side, Kody Brown, polygamist, 18-time father, and matriarch of a contentious clan, sat with a look of subdued resolve. On the other hand, there was Meri Brown, his first wife, the one who had been with him the longest, who had stuck by him through thick and thin. Now, in a battle she never thought she would be engaged in. Kody's face was inscrutable, the confidence of which he was once known now tempered by the realization of what was at hand. His marriage to Meri had been in decline for long. Their own marriage, once hopeful and full of promise, had collapsed under the pressures of betrayal, distance, and unfulfilled expectations. This ordeal was more than a courtroom drama. It was the last not act of a marriage that had been slowly withering away for years. But now, Kody was intent on taking back what he perceived as his right, gaining control once again. His eyes would occasionally flick towards Robyn, his fourth wife, who sat next to him, her hand lightly placed on his, a wordless encouragement during this emotional time. Meri, however, looked as though she had fought 1,000 wars, each one harder, each one more draining, wearing down a little bit of her warmth and softness. Her eyes, normally full of light, were now narrowed with steely determination. This was not merely a legal battle. This was the battle for her dignity, for her place in the family she had built with him. She had endured so much with Kody, so many promises, so many hopes for a future together. Yet there she stood in court, facing him, aware this could be it, all coming to an end. The court was a mix of business formality and emotional passion. The judge, an older man with a stern expression, looked down at the documents on the table in front of him. The case was no stranger to him. He had heard divorces, separations, and disagreements before. But this case was special. This wasn't just a disagreement over assets or custody. It was war over love, fidelity, and the very essence of a family. Kody's plea was straightforward on paper. He sought to put into place the terms of his divorce from Meri, hoping to eliminate the final remnants of a relationship that had already been cut in all ways, except legally. But Meri was not going out quite quietly. She had been with Kody through all of it, his highs and lows, his ups and downs. She had been the first to wed him, the first to endure the public scrutiny that went with their alternative lifestyle, and now she was battling for what she felt was hers: respect, recognition, and closure. The courtroom was silent, the only noise, the gentle tap of a pen on a notepad, as the judge awaited the moment when he would make his decision. Kody fidgeted in his chair, his anxiety concealed beneath a cool demeanor. He was accustomed to being the one who dictated, the one who made the choice. But this time, he had no idea what the result would be. He knew Meri was stubborn, knew she wouldn't let him off without a fight. At the other end of the room, Robyn sat with anticipation and worry. She had been a silent witness to this ordeal, standing by Kody in silence. But now, as the time of reckoning loomed close, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by it all. What would the judge's ruling be? And what would it portend for their family? Robyn's mind ran through 1,000 possibilities as she looked at Kody. This was the time that would determine their future, but the future of all those involved. The judge rose from his seat, his robes sweeping the floor as he opened his mouth to pronounce judgment. All those present were holding their breath, anticipating the verdict that would determine their destiny. It was not a decision. It was the culmination of years of sentiment, years of creating a family and having it disintegrate. Kody's fingers drummed lightly on the table, his gaze locked on the judge. Meri's hands were folded tightly in her lap, her face pale but determined. Robyn squeezed Kody's hand, silently offering her support. But the air was heavy with uncertainty. Would the judge pass? Would judge rule in Kody's favor? And if so, what would happen to Meri, to their family, to everything they had built together. And as the judge's voice finally pierced the silence, the room grew even quieter. The gravity of the moment couldn't be denied. And for Kody, Meri, and Robyn, this was merely the first step on a long road ahead, equipped with pain, choices, and a new reality they weren't prepared to accept. But whatever came next, the harm had been done, and the family would never be the same. And the verdict of this case wasn't about the court, it was about what not would become of the family that had been destroyed by secrets and deception. And then the judge began to speak, the words that would change it all. The courtroom silence was dense, each passing second drawn out like an eternity. The judge's words had hardly left his mouth when the room was filled with a tension that was almost palpable. Kody's face was still a mask, but the tension of his clenching fists gave away his nervousness. He was a man who had constructed his entire existence on control, being the decision maker. But now, sitting in anticipation of the judge's final verdict, he saw that control ebbing away, piece by piece. He looked at Robyn, her gentle eyes full of worry, a quiet sadness unfolding in her face. She had been with him through everything. The relationship cemented over the years of dealing with the intricacies of polygamy. But even Robyn, the only person whose back he had ever had, couldn't help but feel the pressure of it all. Their existence together, the existence she had chosen, was teetering on the edge. Was this really the existence she wanted? Was it worth it? The endless struggle for Kody's attention, his approval, the years of swallowed tears were now threatening to burst out of the back of her throat. Meri sat in the corner of the room, back straight, attempting to keep it together, but the years of pain, of being overlooked, could not be silent. She had wasted so much of her life trying to earn Kody's respect, trying to remind him of what they had once shared. That love, however, had never come back, instead being replaced by an emptiness that only grew stronger with time. She had battled for her position in this family, but it now seemed that it was all for nothing. Kody's appeal, this final legal battle, felt like the final nail in the coffin of their relation. She had tried so hard to be the supportive wife, the one who kept the family together, but Kody had long ago stopped seeing her as his partner. Meri's mind wandered back to the early days, the hope, the promise of a future together. She had been the initial one, the one who had responded yes to Kody's idea of a polygamous family. They had created something lovely, or so she had believed. Through the years, that dream had fractured into 1,000 delicate pieces, each a reminder of a betrayal she had silently accepted. But the betrayal she had suffered the most was the one that had occurred not at the hands of another woman, but at the hands of Kody himself. His emotional distance, his growing affection for Robyn had left her in the shadows. Forgotten, the wounds of betrayal ran deep in Meri's heart, but even deeper was the fear that this court case wasn't just about legal matters. It was about the death of everything she had once believed in. Kody knew the tension in the room was growing. He could feel it pressing against him, threatening to suffocate him. He had made his choice. Robyn was the one who stood by him, the one who understood him in ways that no one else could. But now, as he sat in the courtroom, facing Meri's quiet defiance, he began to question whether he had made the right decision all along. Was it worth it? Could he live with the consequences of this broken family? He recalled the days when it had only been him and Meri, when they had created a life together, the early morning conversations about their future, the late evenings cuddled together. But somewhere along the journey, they had gotten lost, and now he could see the pain in her eyes, the hurt that she had tried to conceal for so long. He had been too self-absorbed, too preoccupied with his own desires and requirements to notice. But now there was no going back. Robyn was the one who had remained. She had never hesitated, never wavered in her loyalty. She had given him everything, just as Meri had done before her. But now, as he looked at her again, he could see the doubt in her eyes. Not could she go on living like this? Could she keep on sharing him with the others and knowing that their lives rested on such insecure foundations? As the judge's voice cut through his mind, Kody's stomach knotted. The moment of truth was about to arrive. The verdict would be rendered, and no matter what happened, someone was going to get hurt. Meri had given everything to Kody, but she could feel the pressure of her sacrifices bearing down upon her. She had always been the strong one, the one who held things together, but now she wasn't certain she could do it anymore. The legal process was just a formality in comparison to the emotional strain that it had made her endure. She craved closure, but what if the closure was paid for at a cost too steep to incur? The room was still again, and everyone was watching the judge prepare to speak again. The tension couldn't have been any greater, and it felt as if the whole world was caught in a breathless moment. The verdict would arrive shortly, and all of their labor of love, their family, their love, would be destroyed or sustained. The stakes were greater than ever. In that courtroom, something more was on the line than the verdict. It was the unspooling of a dream, a family, and the individuals who had once trusted one another. And then, once more, the judge spoke, his words heavy with the weight of the future. The courtroom was a pressure cooker, the temperature of unresolved feelings building with each new moment. The judge, his gavel hovering above the podium, glared sternly around the room. Everyone was aware that this was it, the moment that would shape the destiny of their knotted lives, the resolution of years of tension, betrayal, and unspoken pain. Kody leaned forward in his seat, his hands wet with sweat, but his jaw was firm with resolve. His gaze, which was once full of hope and love for Meri, had become far away, cold as if he had already moved on. Yet, there was a shake in his hand that betrayed the uncertainty eating away at him. Meri, however, was a portrait of contained chaos. Her breasts rose and fell with brief breaths, her complexion white, but her eyes burned with a passion that had been fueled by years of being ignored, forgotten, and now betrayed all over again. She had struggled for years, but now she was prepared to take the knockout blow. The burden of the years, the agony of each silent rejection, every mute hurt, was on her shoulders like an anchor. As the judge's voice resonated in the room, she could hear her heart thumping within her chest. "Is everything in order?" the judge asked, his measured voice betraying no hint of emotion. Kody nodded, hardly looking at the man, his mind elsewhere, churning in a tempest of guilt and rebellion. This fight wasn't about technicalities, wasn't about assets or custody. This was about something more, something far more painful. It was about the breaking down of everything they had created, their family, their union, and the vows they had made to each other. The judge then focused on Meri, now on her feet. Her voice, when speaking, was firm but weighted with emotion. "Yala, I've lived with him, I've battled for him, but it was never enough. The sacrifices I made, the love I gave, it's all been discarded, as if I meant nothing." Her words were daggers, each one sharp and deliberate, slicing into Kody's heart. The intensity of her agony was not something to be ignored. Kody winced. He had heard it all before, felt the bite of her bitterness, but here, in this bleak, unforgiving environment, her words were a slap to the face. The consequences of all that he had done to her weighed him down. The dishonesty, the abandonment, the years spent struggling to balance his feelings, his marriages, his family. Could he have done differently? Should he have been different? His heart constricted at the thought that he had taken her for granted, taken all of them for granted. Robyn, who had been quiet up until this point, suddenly grabbed Kody's hand. Her fingers were light, but in her eyes, there was a desperate depth. She needed him to remain calm, to remain in control. She had been his rock through it all. But in this moment, she knew that his triumph would cost him much more than he could possibly know. Tablasis, Trail, what would this do to their future? What would? Meri's words struck Kody like a storm, each one pulling him deeper into a sea of doubt and guilt. Was his family truly worth this price? Was it worth the pain that now filled the room? But before the judge could answer, he raised his hand, holding up a finger for silence. The courtroom was plunged into a stunned quiet, the pressure of the moment weighing heavily on all of them. The verdict was at hand. It was imminent now, and with each passing second, the tension was crushing. Kody's eyes darted to Robyn again. She had always been the strong one in his life, the one who had never wavered. But now she seemed fragile too, her own doubts creeping into her face. What if this did not turn out as they had expected? What if all that they had struggled for collapsed around them? Meri caught Kody's attention, and for an instant there was a flash of something, a memory, an old moment of intimacy. It was a brief recollection of the man she used to love, the man who used to make her feel loved and valued. But that man had been gone for a long time, replaced by someone who acted distant, aloof. The judge cleared his throat and said, his tone weighed with finality. Having carefully considered the same, I hereby pass my order. The appeal filed by Kody Brown is hereby allowed. For an instant, time froze. Kody's breath hung in the croak of his throat. The win was his. It had been what he desired, what he had struggled for, But in the moment that the judge's words hung suspended in the air, a hollow, gnawing hollowness rooted itself in his chest. Robyn squeezed his hand tighter, her expression a mix of relief and uncertainty. But Meri's face fell, the pain of defeat mirrored in every inch of her being. She had lost. She had fought so hard, but in the end, it wasn't enough. The victory Kody had worked for now felt hollow, the weight of his success overshadowed by the devastation it had caused. And then, as the courtroom cleared and the reality of the decision started to sink in, the truth became clear in agonizing detail. The fight had been won, but the war was hardly begun. The question that had hung in the air all along remained unanswered. Was it worth it? The courtroom was silent, the air charged with tension. Kody's win was in the books, but the silence was oppressive. Like the real gravity of the moment had not fully registered yet. Meri, eyes wide, lips shaking, froze in the middle of the room, not being able to grasp what had occurred. The win Kody had achieved was not just a victory in court, it was a death warrant to the relationship she once cherished. But the shock that ensued was not something Kody had expected. As the judge made to stand, signaling the end of the hearing, Meri's voice cut through the stillness like a blade. Her words were low, almost a whisper, but each one hit with the force of a bombshell. "You think it's over?" she asked, emotion thickening her voice, but a hint of defiance creeping in. "You think this win counts for something? You're mistaken, Kody. There's more to this than you realize. You've won today, but the truth is coming out." Kody's heart missed a beat. He'd anticipated some pushback from Meri, yes, but not this. Not this. He glanced over at Robyn, who'd been standing alongside him, her hand still clutched in his tightly, but concern etched onto her face. She felt it changing, the moment altering. Something was occurring, something none of them had anticipated. "Meri, what are you saying?" Kody's tone, even so calm, held a faint undertone of panic. "Answer immediately." Rather, her gaze drifted toward the doors of the courtroom as if she were searching for something or someone. She breathed deeply, preparing herself for the words that would destroy it all. "I have something you need to listen to," she told him softly, her voice strengthening now with determination. "Something I'd been carrying for a very long time." Kody's forehead furrowed as he battled for calm. Had Meri actually managed to turn this around? What sort of twist was she planning? He had emerged victorious in court, and now all he desired was to leave with his life and his marriage to Robyn untouched. But Meri was still standing there, her presence dominating the room. She was not finished yet. "Don't do this, Meri," Robyn interjected, stepping forward slightly, her voice trembling with a mix of concern and fear. "Whatever you're about to say, it's not going to change anything." But Meri just shook her head, her eyes now fixed on Kody with an unspoken look of understanding. She was not speaking to Robyn, she was speaking to Kody. And the reality, as it was soon to be revealed, was one Robyn could not mend. "You don't have a clue what has gone on behind closed doors," Meri went on, every word carefully articulated, each sentence heavy with implication. "You've kept me at arm's length all these years and constructed a life with Robyn. But you don't understand the truth of what went on when you abandoned me. And I don't mean your physical absence, I mean the emotional, IDAC, and psychological games you've played with all of us." Kody felt a chill run through him as Meri's words sank in. What was she implying? What had she been hiding all this time? He had thought he knew everything there was to know about Meri, had convinced himself that their broken relationship had been fully resolved. But now, the air in the room shifted again, this time with an unmistakable undercurrent of betrayal. The room fell silent as Meri dug into her bag and produced a manila envelope. She held it high, for all to see, never taking her eyes off of Kody. This is it, she said, her voice steady now, like a woman who had finally made peace with the storm she was about to unleash. This is what you've been too blind to see. This is what you've been hiding from. Kody's throat constricted. The envelope felt like a bomb set to explode in his hands. What could she have? What hidden thing was she going to reveal to him that he had not anticipated? He signaled for the bailiff to bring it closer to him, not able to take his eyes from the envelope. As Kody tore it open, his trembling fingers, the courtroom waited with bated breath. He extracted a pile of papers, his gaze going over the first few sentences. But then, like a ton of bricks, something struck him. His face went pale, and for an instant, he couldn't catch his breath. The papers in his fingers weren't mere ordinary paperwork. These were documents, family documents, records of money transactions, papers from their wedding that had never been revealed before. But there was something that shouted louder than anything else. A meticulous account of Kody's financial transactions, including a large sum of money that had been transferred under the cover of business investments. Kody froze. Meri watched him closely, her expression unreadable. "I'm not the only one who's been lying here," she said softly, but every word was a dagger. "You've kept things from Robyn, from all of us, and now the truth is out." Kody couldn't respond. His mind was racing as he pieced together the implications of the papers in his hands. Had he really been caught? Was there no way out of this now? Meri's revelations hit harder than any court ruling ever could. Kody was facing more than just a marriage in shambles. He was facing a collapse of everything he had built, every lie, every secret. Robyn also had been silent, her face wide with shock. She never suspected that Kody's life was so full of secrets, so much concealed truth. The man she believed she knew, the man she had stood by and defended, was now standing before her like a stranger. The truth had been revealed at last, but it wasn't the truth anyone had been hoping for. The room was thick with shock as the weight of Meri's revelation sank in. Kody could only stare at the papers in his hands, his entire world beginning to crumble around him. What would happen now? Would Robyn stay? Would Meri's victory be complete? And more importantly, how would Kody ever recover from the truth that was now out in the open? The truth had finally come out, but what Kody didn't realize was that Meri's bombshell was only the beginning of a far deeper betrayal. The courthouse was almost empty now, the once vibrant tension hanging in the air, now replaced by a suffocating silence. Kody sat in the same chair where he had been just hours earlier, the weight of everything crashing down on him in waves. The documents that Meri had shown him were strewn across the table in front of him, each one a reminder of the secrets he had maintained, of the falsehoods he had spoken. It was the sensation in the pit of his stomach. That right was one of sickness, not due to the case itself, but because he knew the extent of his own betrayal. Robyn had already gone out of the courtroom. She hadn't uttered a word to him since Meri had broken the news. She had simply gotten up and left. Kody hadn't even gotten a moment to realize she was gone. Never mind grovel for forgiveness. To him, she was always his rock of certainty. But now, the very essence of their relationship seemed fragile, unstable. So it was all constructed on sand, and with every revelation of truth, it was dissolving around him. He rose slowly, his legs trembling under him, and walked towards the door. But the quiet in the courtroom, the vacuum that surrounded him, was thunderous. The trial was done, but the war of emotions was only just starting. Outside, the warm afternoon sunlight didn't do much to improve his mood. He emerged into the bright light, squinting as his eyes struggled to adjust. Robyn was nowhere to be found. He hadn't really expected her to be there, not after everything that had been revealed. She was likely somewhere working through everything, deciding if she could even look at him the same anymore. Kody recognized he had let her down, let them all down, in ways he had not yet comprehended until then. Kody's victory had been bought at a high price, a loss he could no longer avoid. But the real effect of his deeds, the ramifications, had only just started to spin out of control. Meri's face flashed in his mind, the way she had stood there, unwavering. As she revealed the hidden truths, she had been right all along. He hadn't seen the full picture. He had been so focused on his own desires, on maintaining control, that he had ignored the emotional devastation his decisions had caused. Now it was too late to undo the damage. His mind then turned to the rest of his children. How would they perceive their father now? He had always taken pride in being a solid presence for them, a guiding light in their lives. But now, what would they see when they looked at him? A man who had failed at the greatest challenge of all, loving and caring for the family he had started. Kody was always around people who depended on him, who needed him. But here, for the first time in his life, he felt completely isolated, seeing that his own actions had harmed the ones he loved most. The women who had stood with him, the kids who looked up to him, was more than he could take. In the distance, Kody could see Robyn's car leave the parking lot. She didn't glance back. She didn't need to. He knew she was gone. Yet, he couldn't prevent himself from running after her, his heart thumping in his chest as he ran towards her car, his footsteps ringing on the pavement. "Robyn," he shouted, his throat strained with urgency. "Wait, for goodness sake, we have to talk." She didn't halt. She didn't even ease up. Kody came to a standstill, the finality of her leaving, weighing in on him like lead in his heart. Robyn, the only woman who had ever been there for him, had left, and it was his fault. At that instant, Kody understood the magnitude of his loss, one that transcended the courtroom, transcended the verdict. He had not only lost a wife, but his opportunity for redemption. Within the courtroom, Meri had stayed back, witnessing the drama playing out outside through the windows. Her face was inscrutable, but in her heart of hearts, she was aware that her struggle had not gone for naught. She had revealed the truth, and she had burst the bubble of Kody's ideal family. She had noticed the cracks in their fala necessidade long ago, and now the cracks had finally blown wide open. But even Meri was aware that the win had been bitter. Sure, she had revealed Kody's secrets, but it hadn't given her the satisfaction she had desired. It had simply started the process of destroying something that could never be restored to its former state. There was no turning back to how things had been. She had emerged a victor, but it didn't feel like a victory. As Kody stood in the parking lot, seeing Robyn drive off, a new, hurtful reality started to wash over him. He had destroyed all that he had held dear. He had believed that the victory in the legal war would be closure, that it would grant him a sense of control. But this was not the case. The war had never been about winning or losing. It had been over something much deeper: love, trust, and respect. And ultimately, it wasn't the court of law that would determine the destiny of the Brown family. It was the relationships they had struggled so desperately to create and the destruction that had been caused. Kody's journey had come full circle. He had spent years battling for control, but ultimately, it was his relationships, not his victories, which controlled the path of his life. Yalia, Isleway, as the sun went down behind the hills, throwing long shadows across the parking lot, Kody stood by himself, contemplating the result of his decision. The war had been won, but if peace was to ever exist again, was uncertain. Do you believe Kody made the best choice by fighting for dominance? Or did he take everything he cared about too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think of this dramatic courtroom saga and what Kody's actions bode for his future. The aftermath of this case is far from over. With bonds broken and secrets revealed, what happens next for Kody, Robyn, and the rest of the Brown family? Comment below. Do you believe Kody can ever mend the hurt he's caused? We want to hear your opinions about his journey and the decisions he made. Alyalia,